Hey everyone, this is Chris. Welcome back to the channel. So is ARK Invest and Cathie Wood fraud? Should you be selling all of these things and getting out and running away? Maybe you did it already, but I think this is an important topic to talk about, and I just want to illustrate a few things with you. Also too, if you're new here, my name is Chris. I was a professor for about 10 years, and this will help you grow your account and grow your mind. So let's start with this. This is ARK Invest, and they're currently trading around 43.20. And it's really interesting because, yes, over the last 5 years, they are up 51%, right? So keeping it real. And the funny thing about ARK Invest is they always like to say, hey, everyone, have a 5-year perspective here, ARK, or 10-year, or even 30 years. They're always saying that kind of stuff. And, for many people, though, I think that got into ARK, this past year, they're down 62% year to date, they're down 55%. Or if you bought at the peak, which would have been around February 2021, say buying this thing at 156, you'd be down 72%. So I know that would be very, very stressful because one of the things that people would want to get an ETF, because the ETF is supposed to be safe, right? The whole idea is that you have someone professional managing your money. Also, too, you just think that these kind of things would have a diversity of companies in there, and therefore by diversification that you should be protected. I really get it. And it would be really disheartening for people who are new to the market and they don't really understand what's going on. First thing I just want to mention is that, you take a look at this. This is on their website, and it kind of illustrates their point. We invest solely in disruptive innovation. And the thing is, what happened basically is that they weren't really diversified. They invest solely in disruptive innovation. And also that translates to be perfectly frank, they invested in companies that were not profitable and invested in companies that were highly overvalued at the top of the bubble, right? It was a bubble. And the other thing that, I want to mention with this kind of stuff, just understand, and it's Cathie Wood, and personally, I like Cathie Wood in terms of a person. I think she's entertaining. I think she's a nice person, but, it's funny because we have this discussion where we talk about these fraud topics, like, for example, there's a Stockmo guy, and someone write in comment, well, I think he's a nice guy. He takes care of his family and stuff like that. But you also have to ask yourself the question of, like, if you cause people to lose a lot of money and lose their retirement, is that a nice person, right? Even though they do it with a smile. I think it's an interesting question. So yes, Cathie Wood is a is a nice person, etc. But part of what I sort of really lost respect for her as of late is how she responds in interviews to any sort of like, hey, why is your fund down 56% or something like that, and it's just very robotic and very much the same answer every time. Oh, we have a long-term horizon. We're investing in innovation, and just give us 10 more years or 5 more years or whatever, right? And it has a lot of hubris, and I think that's the best word to describe it. It's hubris. The other thing too is to understand, and this is the most important part to understand, these people make money by managing other people's money. That's all there is to it. So even if your investments aren't spectacular, as long as you're getting management fees from managing other people's money, right? You make money. You just give a bunch of people to give you money, and you take your fees from that, and you're basically selling people a story. So it's in a way kind of like a used car salesman. You're selling someone a dream, and the problem is that, and just keeping it real with you guys, any person who's experienced in the market, has taken accounting, which I have. I'm not an accountant, but I've taken accounting at business school, and just on this channel, as I tell you guys as well, just your basic PE ratios, you would have known there is a problem. I made a video about this before. This was back in December 5th, talking about ARK Invest and comparing it to the Janus Fund. And if you haven't seen that, go back. You can take a look at this. And it didn't get a lot of views because, frankly, back in November, this is early December, basically telling everyone it looks like this is the top of the bubble, and it's not popular, right? It's not popular, and totally understand, right? If people are drinking the Kool-Aid, you're making lots of money, etc. It's not fun to talk about the crash, not fun at all. And in fact, for some people, they've been down quite longer. And I want to go, actually, what this will do here. And I want to illustrate why I'm making this video, because when you look at ARK Invest, it's down 62%, or we'll just do like a Zoom, or actually DocuSign just crashed recently. It was like I think this is one, I'm pretty sure this is one of their picks. I could be wrong. If this wasn't one of their picks, let me know. But this is just an example of and it's funny because DocuSign's not like awful. You doubled your money in the last 5 years, but if you go from an awful, I mean in terms of company, it's not like this is an awful company. It was traded at 300 and then now it's down 71%. And even though it's not an awful company, because we all know what it is, we all use it, the issue is they're unprofitable and there's no PE ratio on these things and no dividend. And I've been pointing this stuff out a lot is I wouldn't be messing with any companies right now that have no earnings. I mean, they don't make any money. They're losing money. DocuSign, or I think TDoc was another one of her big picks. And I don't know if they're profitable. Yeah, they don't have PE on yet. I could probably do a deep dive on this kind of thing, how close they are to profitability. Because it is certainly true. If you didn't buy at the top and you're looking at these things, some of these might come back. That is completely true. Some of these might come back, but just do be aware there's no PE, no dividend. And the longer the recession goes, this is just also true. And if companies have debt, if companies are losing money, what do you think happens? It's not a good formula, right? You're going to a recession, you have a lot of debt, and you're not making any money. The piper's got to be paid. I can't tell you. What is this going on here? Teladoc hit with a lawsuit and alleging misled investors out of significant losses. Oh, wow. I'll have to, maybe, I'll read that article later and we'll do a video about Teladoc later today. Sounds like an interesting one. And so this is sort of what happened with ARK Invest is just that they were only investing in these kind of things. And they just would say the word disruptive the whole time. A lot of people fell for it. And it's frustrating because, I'm keeping it real as well. I've been telling people all along how to beat the market. And like I was telling everyone, hey, everyone, you should get Archer Daniels. I always talk about Archer Daniels because it was a pretty easy one to choose. To be really frank, I was thinking we're going to recession. Inflation is going to be going up, and what's a kind of company that would benefit from that? And I kept saying you want dividend, you want a company that's essential, and you want a decent PE. Archer Daniels got a PE, 15, dividend of 1. This is totally fine, and it's in an industry that's going to do well. And one thing that's been bothering me, and why I make these videos as well, is there's so many kids on YouTube that basically this is what they would do. They didn't know anything about stocks. And then they would just go look at ARK Invest list of stocks or whatever Cathie Wood was promoting on TV or whatever, and then just say, oh, Cathie Wood's so smart, and this is why we're getting this, and let's all jump on the Cathie Wood bandwagon. And that's the essence of a bubble. When we're not talking about fundamentals whatsoever, we're not talking about anything with related to how much a company makes or looking at any kind of numbers and just saying ARK Invest likes it, therefore I like it, and look at my YouTube views going up. And that's clearly a bubble. And believe me, I really get it. I totally get it. What people do now is really funny. Sometimes you make these kind of videos and people say, "Oh, Chris, do you think you're smarter than Cathie Wood? Cathie Wood is smart. She runs a fund. You don't run any fund. You're so dumb." That's basically the gist of their argument. And I don't run a fund. That's not something that I decided to go do. A lot of my friends from Penn actually went into finance, went into Wall Street. I myself actually was in New York City during the pandemic because my wife and I, we were talking about would I want to take a job at Wall Street or something like that, like a Morgan Stanley kind of thing. The pandemic hit and ended up doing something else because New York City's closed, so we're not in New York City right now. It's funny how the world works out. So I'm just saying we actually looked at doing the whole Cathie Wood Wall Street thing if we wanted to do. It's just not something I ended up pursuing. So not everyone ends up being a fund manager, right? But it doesn't mean that people who don't become fund managers are incapable of doing it. It just depends what you want out of life, right? And I chose a different path. I just want to illustrate though that not every stock is crashing in the market. I always show you guys the same ones, but like Lockheed Martin is something we've been talking about the past year. It's up 11%. We were talking about back in November, December. If you're in this thing, you're up 32%, which is totally fine. Yeah, I get it. We didn't quadruple our money with Lockheed Martin the last year, but you know what? We're not losing. And even some of the picks that weren't perfect, Verizon, the past year it's down 11%, year to date it's down 2%, and if you got in this thing and been buying the dips, you're doing totally fine. These kind of things is what I'm want to illustrate with you is not everyone is losing all of their money in the market. I see kids post on Reddit that oh, I had, whatever, $30,000 or $100,000 and now I only have $2,000 or, you'll see this stuff on Reddit where people basically lost 85% of their portfolio, 90% of the portfolio, those kind of things. And they think that everyone is losing all their money in the market, and we kind of share all this stuff on social media that we're all poor together. It's just, I'm telling you, it's not true. If you completely disregarded fundamentals and completely disregarded anything to do, like for example, this is Verizon. You can see they have a PE and a dividend, right? And if you're only looking at companies like a Teladoc, where those are blank, and if every company you look at is like that, where there's no PE and no dividend, you kind of think that's normal. But it's not. If your whole portfolio is filled with this kind of stuff, you're going to lose all your money, chances are, because you're taking too many home run shots. It's kind of how it works. And going back to the baseball situation is, you try to swing for the fence every single time. Your strikeout ratio is really high, right? So those home run sluggers tend to not bat as accurately as other batters that try to play it safer. And go for singles. And this one of the things that I've mentioned to people on this channel as well is just take single after single after single, and you're going to be fine, right? If you would have gotten, say, Sucor Energy, which no one talks about on this channel, I've mentioned it a few times. It's a Canadian company. They don't talk about this one on TV. Why? Because on TV it's mostly Americans. I'm just keeping it real. And they have their corporate sort of sponsors and ads and TV sort of revenue that they have to worry about and sort of appease their the overlords, if we want to say it. But this is one that no one talks about, and it's great. It's a Canadian company. It's an energy, but all the energy stocks have been doing really, really well. And I just really want to iterate that not everyone is losing all their money in the market. You can do totally fine. We mentioned about Verizon. Also, too, I've talked about REITs on this channel. Ticker O is sort of one of my favorites. Is it quadrupling your money and things like that? No, it's not, but it's fine. It's an investment. It's a dividend one. PE1 is high on this, but this is a REIT, so you judge these differently than other stocks. Banks and REITs, you don't really, I won't say completely irrelevant. For REITs, you could say PE is pretty much irrelevant. Basically, because this is real estate, that what you're looking for is you want to look at their debt levels, and you want to essentially look at the contracts that they have, who their tenants are. Essentially, you make money off. Reality Income has like Walgreens and Home Depot and what else? CVS. They're kind of in Lowe's, Home Depot, CVS, and I think like Walmart's are their tenants. So like big companies are their tenants, and when you essentially the landlord of like companies that aren't going to go out of business, chances are your business is pretty stable, and then these kind of companies also give you dividends on a regular basis as a dividend aristocrat. Yes, it's down 3%, but it's not a big deal. Your dividend is 4%, so you're basically flat. And essentially, if you construct your portfolio right, if you had a bunch of cash, you had your Series I bonds I talk about on this channel, and you've been in relatively safe stuff, not swinging for the moon, because you have to understand in this environment, it's not an environment you want to be swinging for home runs. You want to be preserving cash and not losing, essentially, is what you want to be doing. So I know I ramble on a bit with this stuff. I get frustrated because I just see what's going on around the internet and the YouTubes, and basically you have a lot of kids writing Cathie Wood and ARK Invest, bubble, essentially. And now all the content is, oh, we've lost everything, and the market's crashing, no one can win, and everything's all corrupt, and this tails on I hate Joe Biden, which is part of it, right? It's just funny, and the thing is with any kind of bubble or any kind of economic thing, things can't just go up forever. You can't just print free cash forever and expect it to go to the moon and not to pay any consequences of it. And so it's frustrating for investors out there who are losing with ARK. I really understand, but I just wanted to make this because I want to just illustrate sort of what happened, right? They didn't diversify really, even though they had different companies, and that I don't want you to think that you can't win in the market. You can do totally fine. The reality though is that if you make stuff that's like not ARK Invest, growth, crazy home run kind of stuff, people don't want to watch. People don't want to say, talk about, say, Verizon, and people don't want to talk about Chevron or whatever, because it's not fun. It's more fun to talk about Teladoc and Zoom and Tesla and these kind of things. And but it is what it is, and that's how the algorithm works. And so I'm as I make videos on YouTube, I have to do the popular stocks or no one watches the channel. If I do stocks that teach people how to beat the market, make money, no one watches. So I guess I want to emphasize, and I've said it over and over again, popular does not equal good. But I get it. People say, Chris, you're so dumb. You only have a few subscribers. You have no idea what you're talking about. Cathie Wood has way more subscribers than you, and therefore she must be really brilliant. So you make your own decision. And you know how your account is doing better than me. I don't know how your account is doing, but I can just tell you that on this channel and my own self, we've been doing fine. So anyway, that's all I have to say about that. I hope everything's well with you. I hope this is interesting and educational, and catch you in the next video.